If I want to raise the waistline of the skirt so I have a high-waisted skirt, I need to start by tracing the pattern onto the paper, and then I'm going to draw the line from the center front so that it extends all the way up, and then I'm going to line up my front bodice right there so that it's on that same straight line. And my original dart was over here. But when I draw a line straight down from the bust point, parallel to my center front or back, if I draw the line straight down, then I need to move my dart over just a little bit to match with that. Because I can't move the bust point, but I can move the skirt point. So I left the dart leg the same length and the same width. I just scooted it over to match with my bust point. So temporarily right now, I'm going to take this down. So right now we're using pieces that are not balanced for a princess line, and this might be easier to do on something that is balanced for a princess line. So if I move this dart, so I'm going to come over here and close, flipping it so I can close it. I'm going to close the dart so that it ends up to be a half hook, so that my new dart opening ends up to be a ½ inch wide. And I'm also going to have to move my bust dart, but it wasn't balanced to begin with, so it's something that would have had to have been done. So this is where this becomes my armhole dart, and this is the space for my waistline dart because I have to close it until it matches the skirt. So I'm moving this dart over too because I'm still using that same bust point parallel to the center front line. So that just means that my new dart on my bodice is going to be here. And that's how you get them to line up so that they match. Now I've got it taped down kind of low, and if you look at this space right here, usually what I do is I'll take that total and divide it in half, and I'll do that with the total of the rest of the piece, and they usually end up overlapping about 1/4 of an inch instead. So I would want to raise that up just a little bit, but I will do a separate video on that. So that means that my side seam is going to join right here, and my dart is going to join where I drew it. And if that doesn't all make sense right now, it will in a different video, but the important point, when I drew this line right here, these two sides are going to be the same, those two are going to be the same, and those are going to be the same together. So that looks like my 1¼ inch. And because this comes up just a little bit more, I'm going to go ahead and let that come up a little bit more on the side and blend it in. So what this is going to end up to be, for just a skirt that has a high waist on it, this overlaps a little bit, and this is separated a little bit. So when you have something that has a high waist and you're wearing it, you usually find little wrinkles on the sides because it doesn't fit quite the same as it does when you have a pattern with a waistline seam. So this is what the pattern looks like. You have a diamond-shaped dart, and it's going to sew together and last better if you blend this into a little bit of a curve right here, even right here. So if you're just guessing at how much you want to add up there, you don't have to get nervous in doing this part. You can just close this so that it's open the same amount as that, and put them down there together and find the angle of the side of the front bodice as it joins the skirt, and then you just taper it back in so that it's balanced. So this dart, this is the center of the dart. You're not going to have room to cut out seam allowance, but when you sew this together, you're just going to stitch down this line and close it, and that's what a high-waisted taper dart is supposed to look like. It's not just going to be a little skirt that you've added it and made it higher and put a little dart in it. It actually needs to be thought through a little bit more. So it would be like this. And if I wanted to do the same thing to my back, I could keep my two darts, or I could combine those two darts into one that has the same total. So they're 7/8 of an inch wide. So I would move it over to here, and I'd put this on a different piece of paper, and I would, well, I'll just do it. So the back that we have that would go with that starts out looking like the original. This is where the new dart would go. And that's marked on the pattern. I maybe want to double check that with the way this works. And you can see that if I mark this space is the same, so I'm going to start there, and then this space, and mark that together, and then come over here. So this actually would sew together. They're the same length, but it would look awfully strange to have two darts sewing into one. So if I do the same thing I did on the front and extend this up, and there are other versions of how to do this on canvas. Use the one that makes the most sense to you. This may not be it. So I have the width that my skirt needs to be. I have my waistline roughly where it needs to be, and if I come over and I mark the width I need on this side and the width I need on this side, then that's the new opening of my dart. And if I double check that, that's 1 5/8 inches, which is 7/8 plus 3/4. And this is my new dart. And the center of the new dart is going to be parallel to the center back. Yeah. One and a half. Half of 1 1/2 is 3/4. So to get the right shape at the top, because the upper part needs less darting than the lower, but you want this to sit parallel. So now I have this one, and I've got this here. I want to draw the shape of the inside of the dart, but because it's not going up any further than this, it will still match. So if I use this one, and it was 1 1/4, then I would want, you need to add seam allowance to it. But if I cut this out, and turn it over, then I'm going to want these to be the same shape and size on the side. So I would just trace the side seam on it so that when they get sewn together, they're going to be the same. Well, I don't want it to be pointy right there. So I'm going to blend them both so they're the same right here. And this is actually easier to do without the seam allowance. So I'm going to cut this off, and that way it will have a nice smooth rounded look. And I'll have to do something similar right here when I'm folding that dart. I'm just going to cut it out so you can see. Because we can see how my mind is tonight. This is not one of my best videos. Okay, so this is going to come together, and then this is going to come together. And you want to have that blend nicely across the top, so while that's closed, and if it helps, you can put a pin or tape there. And I'm going to just square it over from the curve. So that's what the outer edge looks like, minus this. Now that pattern could have been balanced differently and based on the princess line, but most patterns are different from each other because they're different body types, so you'll find them looking different and balancing a little bit differently. But the important thing is the pieces you're using need to work together as a cohesive puzzle unit. So the side seam matches all the way down. You want to make sure it's the same length. I could lengthen it both. But this is the stitching line. And you can fill that in or add seam allowance. This one you could just leave because it doesn't have more. But that is a high-waisted skirt pattern.